The champagne tasted like victory. That's the only way I can describe it. It was crisp, cold, and bubbled with a million tiny promises. Each one seemed to whisper my new name, Mrs. Waverly Wallace. I looked across the polished dance floor, past the swirl of ivory and black, to my husband, Aaron. He was laughing with my father, his head thrown back, the warm glow of the chandeliers catching the silver in his new wedding band. My heart did a flip, a silly, girlish thing that architects aren't supposed to let their hearts do. We're supposed to be about structure, about logic, about foundations that can withstand anything. But Aaron was the kind of man who made you believe in things that defied blueprints. The wedding was everything I'd ever designed in my head, a perfect blend of modern minimalism and classic romance. The venue was a restored art gallery downtown with soaring white walls and massive industrial windows that framed the glittering city skyline. It was a space I'd actually consulted on a few years back, a fact that made the evening feel even more like a culmination of my life's work and my life's love. My dress, a sleek column of silk, felt like a second skin. Everything was perfect, almost insultantly perfect. I was Waverly Abrams. Well, for the next 10 minutes. Anyway, a senior project director at Crescent Design Studio, one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the city. I wasn't just good at my job, I lived it. I dreamed in blueprints and solved logistical nightmares in my sleep. I had climbed the ladder at Crescent with a speed that had left more than a few of my male colleagues dizzy and resentful. The crowning achievement of my career so far was the Archimedes Matrix, a proprietary project management system I had designed and built from scratch. It wasn't just software, it was the firm's central nervous system. It integrated every facet of a project. From initial design sketches and structural load calculations to material procurement, contractor scheduling, and real-time budget tracking. It was my baby, and it had made our projects 30% more efficient and virtually error-free. My boss, the legendary Gregory Lawson, saw me as his star protoguy. His son, however, saw me as a threat. Tate Lawson was the textbook definition of a silver spoon near do well. He had his father's name, but none of his talent or work ethic. He'd skated through architecture school on the family reputation and landed a cushy project manager role at the firm, a position for which he was laughably unqualified. For the past 3 months, ever since I'd been promoted to oversee the firm's flagship project, the billion-dollar Azure Spire skyscraper, Tate had been a thorn in my side. He was my subordinate on paper, but he acted as if he were my overlord, constantly undermining my decisions, misplacing critical documents, and whispering poison about me in the ears of junior staff. His resentment was a palpable, cloying thing, like cheap collage in a hot elevator. His favorite target was the Archimedes Matrix. He called it Waverly's little pet project and claimed it was overly complicated. The truth was, he was too lazy to learn it. I'd scheduled 6 separate training sessions for him and his team. He'd canceled every single one, claiming they were too busy with actual work. His resistance was so absolute that his father, Gregory, had finally thrown his hands up and just let me handle everything related to the system. I was the sole administrator, the only one with the master keys to its architecture. It was a vulnerability I'd pointed out multiple times, but Tate's stubborn pride always got in the way of a solution. I took another sip of champagne, pushing thoughts of Tate and Crescent Design out of my mind. Night was not about work. It was about Aaron, about us, about the future we were building together, a future that had nothing to do with concrete and steel and everything to do with lazy Sunday mornings and shared dreams. My maid of honor, Chloe, clinked her glass against mine. To the bride, she said, her eyes sparkling, "May your marriage be as flawlessly executed as the Azure Spire project." I laughed. Let's hope it has fewer arguments about copper piping specifications. It was then that I felt the buzz. A single, insistent vibration from the small silk clutch on my table. I frowned. I'd made a strict no phones on the table rule, but I'd left mine there just in case of a family emergency. Aaron and I were leaving for a 3-week off-the-grid honeymoon in Bali tomorrow morning. All my project handovers were complete. My out-of-office autoplay was active, and every was dotted and crossed. Curiosity got the better of me. I slipped the phone out of my purse, shielding the screen with my hand. The lock screen showed a single email notification. The sender, Tate Lawson. The subject, employment termination. The music seemed to warp and fade, the happy chatter of my friends and family turning into a dull, distant roar. My breath caught in my throat. This had to be a joke. A sick, twisted, pathetic joke from a man-child who couldn't stand to see me happy. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the phone and opened the email. It was short, brutal, and sickeningly corporate. Waverly, this email serves as official notification that your employment with Crescent Design Studio is terminated, effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your address on file. Please arrange a time with HR next month to collect your personal belongings. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Tate Lawson, Project Manager, Crescent Design Studio, on behalf of Gregory Lawson. The word swam before my eyes. Effective immediately. On behalf of Gregory Lawson. There was no way Gregory wouldn't do this. Not now. Not like this. He was here at my wedding. I'd seen him just an hour ago, shaking Aaron's hand and handing us a ridiculously expensive bottle of scotch. My blood ran cold. This was a coup. Tate had done this behind his father's back. He'd waited for the single moment I was most distracted, most joyful, most vulnerable, and he'd struck. He hadn't just fired me, he'd tried to incinerate the happiest day of my life. I felt a wave of nausea, and the beautiful, expensive champagne suddenly tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked up, my eyes frantically scanning the crowd. I needed to find Gregory. I needed to fix this. My career, my reputation, my masterpiece project, all of it was evaporating in a single callous email. Then I saw Aaron. By this, he was no longer laughing with my dad. He was watching me from across the room, his expression unreadable. He'd seen the shift in my posture, the color drain from my face. With a quiet word to my father, he started making his way toward me, his path straight, determined line through the celebrating crowd. When he reached me, he didn't ask what was wrong. He just gently took the phone from my shaking hand and read the screen. I watched his jaw tighten, a muscle feathering in his cheek. He looked from the phone to my face, and I braced myself for his anger, for the righteous fury that I knew he felt on my behalf. We were supposed to be starting our lives together, and this was a bomb detonated right in the middle of our foundation. But the anger never came. Instead, a slow, strange smile spread across his face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was sharp, calculating, and utterly terrifying. He slipped the phone into his jacket pocket, took my hand, and laced his fingers through mine. "Waverly," he said, his voice a low, steady anchor in my sea of panic. "Look at me." I met his gaze, my own eyes swimming with tears of shock and rage. "Forget about this," he said calmly. "Forget about Tate Lawson. Forget about Crescent Design Studio. Tonight, you are my bride. We are going to drink. We are going to dance. And you are going to throw that bouquet so hard it knocks someone out. Tomorrow, we are going to Bali. This, he squeezed my hand, is the best thing that could have possibly happened to you. I stared at him, bewildered. Aaron, what are you talking about? I just lost my job, my career, the Azure Spire. Trust me, he whispered, his eyes holding mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Just for the next 12 hours, trust me. He thinks he just checkmated you. He has no idea you're about to own the entire board. I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend his calm, his cryptic confidence. My entire professional world had just been shattered by a petty tyrant in an ill-fitting suit, and my new husband was smiling. But I was exhausted, emotionally shredded, and looking into his steady eyes, I found a strange sense of peace. Aaron was a forensic accountant. His world was a landscape of numbers, patterns, and hidden truths. He didn't do baseless optimism. If he was this confident, there was a reason. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I let go. I took a deep breath, squeezed his hand back, and nodded. Okay, I whispered. Okay. But you owe me an explanation, nah? You'll get it. He promised, leading me back toward the dance floor. But first, I believe they're playing our song. For the rest of the night, I moved in a daze, a bizarre bubble of feigned happiness. I danced with my father. I laughed at the best man's speech. I smashed a piece of cake into Aaron's face. But beneath it all, a cold dread and a burning curiosity churned in my stomach. Every time I caught Aaron's eye, he'd give me that same knowing smile. It was a promise of a storm to come, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of anticipation. Tate Lawson had started a war. He just didn't realize my husband had already brought the heavy artillery. The chaos began at 11:37 a.m. the next day. We were in the first class lounge at the airport, sipping mimosas, just hours away from our flight to paradise. My personal phone, which I'd resolved to turn off the moment we boarded, began to vibrate against the marble tabletop. It was a number I knew by heart. Gregory Lawson's private cell. I ignored it. Aaron raised an eyebrow over the rim of his glass. The first wave, he said simply. A minute later, it rang again. I silenced it. Then it rang a third time. And a fourth, a text message popped up. Waverly, call me IMAND-IATLY. This is an emergency. Then my work phone, which was supposed to be deactivated, buzzed to life in my carry-on bag. I pulled it out. 17 missed calls from Gregory. 32 missed calls from various project managers and department heads at Crescent. A flood of frantic emails with subject lines like URGNT, SY Estimol Cayute and Azure Spire access denied, C RICAL and MUERU. A slow, viciously satisfying grin spread across my face. I looked at Aaron. Okay, I said, taking a long sip of my mimosa. Time for that explanation. He leaned back, looking immensely pleased with himself. It started about 2 months ago. He began. You were coming home late every night, completely stressed out. You kept talking about discrepancies, materials not arriving on time, blueprints being slightly off from the approved versions, budget lines that didn't make sense by this. You chalked it up to the size of the project and Tate's incompetence. I nodded, remembering the constant headaches. He was always losing files, approving the wrong purchase orders. I was spending half my time just cleaning up his messes. That's what he wanted you to think, Aaron said, his expression hardening. He wasn't incompetent, Waverly. He's a criminal. I got curious. You know me, I hate unsolved puzzles. So one night, I asked if I could see the raw data from your Archimedes system. You were too tired to argue and gave me your login. He pulled out his own tablet and tapped on a folder, turning the screen to face me. It was filled with spreadsheets, documents, and what looked like copies of internal emails from Crescent. Tate wasn't just making mistakes. Aaron continued, his voice low and serious. He was systematically committing fraud. He set up a shell corporation, a fake materials supplier. He would use his managerial override to slightly alter your approved blueprints, swapping out a grade A structural steel for a cheaper, inferior grade B, for example. Then he would approve purchase orders to his own shell company for the grade A steel at market price. His company would supply the cheaper material to the construction site, and he would pocket the difference. We're talking millions of dollars, Waverly. Millions. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. It wasn't just about money. He was compromising the structural integrity of a ski scraper. He was eliminating fire suppression features and other safety protocols to cut costs, putting hundreds of future tenants at risk. This was beyond petty rivalry. This was sociopathic greed. I gathered everything, Aaron said, scrolling through folders of evidence. Bank records for his shell company, discrepancies between your original blueprints and his altered versions, sworn affidavits from 2 disgruntled suppliers he'd cheated in the past. I have a complete ironclad case. I was going to give it to you on Monday after we got back from the honeymoon. I wanted you to go to Gregory with it to protect you and the firm. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. But then that idiot son of his fired you. On your wedding day, he thought he was getting rid of the only persons smart enough to figure out his scheme. But what he actually did, Waverly, was sever your legal ties to the company. He just absolved you of all responsibility. If this scandal breaks while you're an employee, you're caught in the crossfire. There are investigations, liars. Your reputation gets dragged through the mud, even if you're innocent. But now, you're a private citizen. You're untouchable. The full weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. The mysterious smile, the calm demeanor. It wasn't apathy, it was strategy. He had been holding a nuclear bomb, and Tate had just handed him the launch codes. My phone buzzed again. A text from a frantic project manager, Waverly. Nobody can access the Archimedes matrix. All files are locked. All schedules are frozen. The Azure Spire site is at a complete standstill. Tate doesn't know the master password. Gregory is losing his mind. Please, you're the only one who can fix this. I looked at the text, then at Aaron, and I started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a woman who had just seen the entire chessboard, not just her next move. Tate, in his arrogant attempt to humiliate me, had failed to realize one critical thing. I hadn't just built the Archimedes matrix. I was the Archimedes matrix. My mind held the keys, the architecture, the logic that made the entire multi-billion-dollar operation run. And by firing me, he hadn't just locked me out. He had locked himself in a burning building and handed me the only key. So what now? I asked, my heart pounding with a thrilling, terrifying new sense of power. Aaron's smile was predatory. Now, he said, tapping his credit card on the table to get the waiter's attention, order another round of mimosas. And then we get on a plane to Bali. We turn off our phones, and for the next 3 weeks, Crescent Design Studio ceases to exist. My phone rang again. It was Gregory. I looked at the screen, at the name of the man who had been my mentor, the man who had let his son's poison infect his company. I pressed the red decline button, then powered the phone off completely. It was the most liberating thing I had ever done. Tate thought he'd push me off a cliff. He was about to find out he'd just taught me how to fly. The first week in Bali was a fever dream of sun, sand, and calculated silence. We stayed in a secluded villa with an infinity pool that bled into the jungle canopy. For the first few days, I fought the urge to turn my phone back on, to peek at the corporate carnage I knew was unfolding back home. The phantom buzz of a vibrating phone haunted my pocket. I was an addict going through withdrawal, my drug of choice being control and order. Aaron, bless his heart, was my patient sponsor, constantly distracting me with hikes to hidden waterfalls, dinners on the beach, and a frankly indecent amount of time spent in our four-posture bed. It was during our second week. I walked lounging by the pool with a cocktail in hand at the fog of my old life finally lifted, replaced by the crystal clear air of opportunity. I was watching a team of local craftsmen build a small pavilion near the edge of the property. They worked with an innate, almost instinctual precision, their movements economical, and their communication sparse, but effective. There was no complex software, no Gantt charts, just a shared understanding of the goal and the process. And that's when it hit me. The Archimedes matrix wasn't just a tool for one company. It was a philosophy. It was a methodology for ensuring precision, transparency, and integrity in a field rife with shortcuts and corruption. What Tate had done at Crescent wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom of a systemic disease, and I had the cure. "I'm not going back," I said to Aaron, my voice clear and certain. He looked up from his book. "I never thought you were." "No. I mean, even if they begged, even if they offered me Gregory's job." I sat up, my mind racing, the pieces clicking into place like a perfectly designed truss. He didn't just fire an employee, Aaron. He set a consultant free, a very, very expensive consultant. The rest of the honeymoon was a blur of a different kind of activity. We traded cocktails for coffee and beach towels for spreadsheets on Aaron's tablet. We spent hours brainstorming, outlining a business plan on cocktail napkins. I knew my system's strengths and weaknesses. Aaron knew the financial and legal angles. Together, we designed a new kind of company, not an architecture firm, but a consultancy. We would specialize in project management oversight, forensic architectural analysis, and integrity monitoring for large-scale construction projects. We would be the watchdogs, the guarantors of quality and safety. We named it Precision Protocol Consulting. It was perfect. It was everything I stood for. When we finally landed back home, tanned, rested, and armed with a plan, the world had changed. There were 47 unread emails in my personal inbox and a stack of letters by my front door, many of them sent by courier. Most were from Crescent, ranging in tone from panicked and pleading to vaguely threatening legal jargon. Gregory had offered me my job back with a tripled salary, a corner office, and a significant equity stake in the firm. I deleted the email without a second thought. The real news came from industry journals and gossip sites. The Azure Spire project was in total chaos. Without the Archimedes matrix to manage the labyrinthine logistics, the project had hemorrhaged money. Deadlines were missed. Contractors were walking off the job, and investors were getting nervous. Crescent Design Studio, once the gold standard of the industry, was becoming a laughingstock. My first move wasn't to call Gregory back. It was to call a woman named Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was the head of the city's Department of Urban Planning and Development, a formidable, no nonsense public servant I'd worked with on several occasions. I knew that her department was chronically understaffed and overwhelmed. trying to manually vet the thousands of building plans and safety compliance documents that came across their desks every year. I took her to lunch. I didn't mention Crescent. I didn't mention Tate. I simply laid out my vision for precision protocol consulting. I explained how a system like my Archimedes matrix, customized for the city's needs, could automate their review process, flagging inconsistencies, substandard material specifications, and potential safety violations, and submitted blueprints in a matter of seconds, not weeks. I told her I could build it for them. Eleanor listened intently, her sharp eyes missing nothing. When I finished, she leaned back and stirred her iced tea. "This sounds revolutionary, Waverly," she said. "It also sounds expensive, bot. The system I'm proposing would have caught, for example, the use of uncertified foreign steel in the North Tower project 3 years ago, which cost the city $8 million in retrofitting," I said calmly. "It would have flagged the fraudulent fire safety certifications on the waterfront condos last year. I'm walking by this. My fee will be a fraction of the cost of the next preventable disaster." She signed the contract a week later. Precision Protocol Consulting had its first client, and it was the most powerful one imaginable, the city itself. The work was intense. I hired a small, brilliant team of coders and engineers, and we practically lived in our small, leased office space for the next 6 months. We refined the Archimedes matrix, transforming it from a corporate tool into a civic weapon. We worked directly with Eleanor's team, tailoring the software to their exact specifications, teaching its AI to recognize every trick and shortcut unethical developers used to cheat the system. The day we went live was quiet, almost anticlimactic. There were no fireworks, just a soft hum from the server racks. But I knew we had just fundamentally changed the rules of the game in this city. The first major domino to fall was, poetically, the Azure Spire. As part of the city's new protocol, a protocol my company had designed, all major ongoing projects had to resubmit their complete documentation for re-verification through our new system. Crescent, bleeding money and desperate to get the project back on track, complied immediately. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but Eleanor called me later to describe the scene. The moment Crescent's files were uploaded, the system lit up like a Christmas tree, flagging dozens of critical alerts, substandard materials, unapproved structural modifications, missing safety features, and at the center of it all, a digital trail of fraudulent purchase orders and altered blueprints that all led back to one person, Tate Lawson. The city issued an immediate stop work order on the Azure Spire. The investors pulled out. The story hit the news, and it was a bombshell. Crescent Design's billion-dollar blunder, greed, and fraud hot Azure Spire. The details of Tate's shell company, compromised materials, the blatant disregard for public safety. It was all laid bare. Aaron's meticulously gathered evidence, which we anonymously forwarded to a very ambitious investigative reporter, provided the final devastating nail in the coffin. Tate Lawson was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy. His architect's license was revoked permanently. Crescent Design studio was gutted. They lost their biggest project, faced hundreds of millions of dollars in lawsuits, and their sterling reputation, built over 50 years by Gregory Lawson's hard work, was shattered in a matter of days. I watched the news report from my office, which overlooked the very skyline they had tried to mar. I didn't feel the triumphant glee I had expected. Instead, I felt a quiet, profound sense of order restored. I hadn't sought to destroy them. I had simply built a system that made it impossible for people like Tate to exist. The truth, amplified by technology, had been its own revenge. My company flourished. We were hailed as innovators, saviors of the city's integrity. Contracts began pouring in from other municipalities, and then from private development firms who wanted the precision protocol, seal of approval on their projects to attract investors. We were growing faster than I could have ever imagined. And then, almost a year to the day after my wedding, my assistant buzzed my intercom. "Waverly," she said, her voice hesitant. "There's a Gregory Lawson here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." I took a deep breath. "Send him in." Bah. The man who walked into my office was a shadow of the titan of industry I remembered. Gregory Lawson looked old. His shoulders were slumped. His expensive suit seemed to hang off his frame, and his eyes were hollowed out with exhaustion and defeat. Trailing a few steps behind him, looking at the floor like a chastened child, was Tate. The sight of him was jarring. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a pale, haunted look. He had aged a decade in a year. He'd avoided prison time by cooperating fully and paying massive fines, but his career was over. His name was a curse in the industry. They stood awkwardly in the middle of my spacious, sunlit office. It was a world away from the dark, wood panel room where he had once mentored me. Here I was in control. Waverly. Gregory began, his voice raspy. I came to apologize. What Tate did to you was unforgivable. What I allowed to happen was a failure of my judgment. And I will regret it for the rest of my life." Tate finally looked up, and I was shocked to see genuine remorse in his eyes. The sneering contempt was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate shame. "He's right, Waverly," he mumbled. "I was jealous of you. You had the talent I never did, and instead of learning from you, I tried to tear you down. I was a coward and a fool. I destroyed my father's company, and I almost ruined your life. I am so sorry." Gregory slid a thick envelope across my desk. "This is a check for the full cost of your wedding," he said. "It's a pathetic gesture, I know, but it's a start. And this," he pushed a slim hard drive next to it, "is the original source code for the Archimedes matrix. It's yours. It was always yours. We have no right to it." I looked at the check, at the hard drive, and then at the two broken men standing before me. The revenge I had dreamed of, fiery confrontation, a triumphant gloating, felt childish and hollow now. This was so much more complete. This was utter surrender. "Thank you, Gregory," I said, my voice even. "I appreciate the gesture, but I don't think you came all the way here just to apologize." Gregory's shoulders slumped even further. He looked beaten. "You're right. Our biggest competitor, Omnicorp, is making a play to acquire what's left of Crescent. They're circling like vultures, but I just landed a lifeline, a contract to develop the new municipal arts complex. It's our only shot at survival. The problem is the city's new integrity protocols are stringent. The oversight requirements are beyond what my current team can handle. The contract stipulates that the project management must be handled by a certified integrity partner." He looked me straight in the eye. "It has to be you, Waverly. The city will only approve the project if Precision Protocol Consulting is the one overseeing it. I came here to hire your firm." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. He needed the very system I had built, a system he now had no access to save his company from a crisis his son had created by firing me. It was a perfect closed loop of karma. The old Waverly, the one who was fired via email, would have savored this moment. She would have named an astronomical price, bled him dry, and enjoyed watching his firm squirm under her thumb. But I wasn't that person anymore. Destroying them was easy. Building something better was the real challenge. An idea began to form in my mind, audacious and terrifying and brilliant. "I'm not interested in being your consultant, Gregory," I said, leaning forward. The air in the room crackled with tension. His face fell. "Oh, I see, I understand. You misunderstand," I corrected him gently. "I'm not interested in a client-consultant relationship. I'm proposing a partnership." Both men stared at me, dumbfounded. Here's the deal. I laid it out, my voice ringing with newfound authority. Free. Frescent Design still has some of the best architects and designers in the world. Your creative team is second to none. My company has the best project management and oversight system on the planet. Crescent will handle the design and creative for the arts complex. Precision Protocol will handle the entire project management, from budget to logistics to final inspection. We split the profits 50-50 pot. Gregory looked stunned, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. A partnership. Waverly, that's incredibly generous. It's not generosity, it's good business, I said coolly. But it comes with one non-negotiable condition. I shifted my gaze to Tate, who seemed to shrink under my stare. "Tate, you will be assigned to the project. As a junior draftsperson, your direct supervisor will be the head of my training and compliance division. You will start at the bottom. You will attend every single training module on the Archimedes matrix, the one you so proudly refuse to learn. You will log every hour, file every report, and if you are so much as 5 minutes late with a coffee order, you're gone. You won't just learn how to do things right. You will learn why my way is right. You will work for me." Silence. Tate stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. I could see the war in his eyes, the remnants of his pride fighting against the stark reality of his situation. He was unemployable. A pariah. This wasn't just a job. It was the only path back to any semblance of a professional life. He slowly, deliberately looked at his father and then back to me. He swallowed hard. "I accept," he said, his voice barely a whisper. And in that moment, I knew I had won, not just the battle, but the entire war. By this, my revenge wasn't in his downfall, but in his reconstruction. I wouldn't just watch him fail, I would force him to succeed. But on my terms, he would become a living testament to the superiority of my methods. The following years were a testament to that new beginning. The Municipal Arts Complex was a staggering success, completed ahead of schedule and under budget, a feat unheard of for a public project of that scale. The partnership between Precision Protocol and Crescent Design became a new model for the industry, a fusion of creative genius and logistical perfection. Tate was true to his word. He was quiet, diligent, and painfully thorough. I watched him from a distance, saw him hunched over drafting tables late at night, saw him patiently explaining compliance protocols to subcontractors. The arrogance was gone, burned away by the fires of his own making. In its place was a quiet competence and, I think, a genuine respect for the work. He would never be a visionary, but he became a damn good architect. I didn't destroy my enemy. I absorbed him. I took his father's broken company and reforged it into something stronger, more resilient, and more ethical. I didn't just get my career back. I built an empire that was changing the very foundation of the industry I loved. Sometimes, when I'm standing in my office looking out at the city skyline, I see the Azure Spire. It was eventually completed by another firm, a monument to greed and shortcuts. And then I look at the new arts complex, gleaming in the sun, a symbol of integrity and precision. They say the best revenge is living well. I think they're wrong. The best revenge is building a world where the people who hurt you are forced to live by your rules. Power isn't the ability to destroy. It's the ability to have that power and to choose to build something better instead.